HCG desensitization. Does it happen or is it something else? What I like to do is take common myths or ideas that people have and really dig into the science and understand, well, if there is something happening, what exactly is it? And if the common theory on something regarding TRT isn't true, I kind of need to point that out. I'll start off by saying this. At significantly pharmacologic doses of HCG, some degree of significant desensitization can happen. But guess what we're talking about there? 1,500 IU or more 3 times a week. In TRT dosing, where we're talking about 150 IU at a time or 300 IU at a time, there's actually no clinically proven luteinizing hormone chorionic gonadotropin receptor desensitization anywhere. There's no Leydig cell apoptosis, and there's no real significant decline in intratesticular testosterone. But there is such a thing as the normal pathway from which your testicles produce testosterone from HCG temporarily shifting to a backdoor pathway via kind of congestion of the hormone pathways that might make you think desensitization is happening, but it isn't. And of course, as I've broken down in previous videos, there's estrogen. Estrogen can make it seem like the effects you were getting from HCG aren't happening anymore, and it makes it look like it's HCG stopping working, when in reality, it's just estrogen. Let's break it down, boys. HCG desensitization. Myth? Or is there something behind it? Sit tight, strap in, grab a beer. Let's get into it. Before we start the video, look, Cortex Labs is a TRT guidance, sexual dysfunction resolution performance optimization company. You got 2 major products right now, but a bunch generally right now. And the most popular is Mastering Testosterone Cypionate video course that teaches you how to dial in sexual function using testosterone cypionate. Every imaginable protocol is in there. You can download that instantly at livecortex.com. If you need to hire me for TRT coaching, that is what I do, and it's mostly around sexual function, whether it's a one-off call with me or longer one-on-one packages. You can look at any of that stuff and hire me in under a minute at livecortex.com. All right, so look, there are a couple papers on this. This one is titled Leydig Cell Desensitization by Human Chorionic Gonadotropin Does Not Occur in the Human Fetal Testes, indicating it does happen in the adult testes, but that's not really what this is specifying. It's just saying that in fetal testes, there is no significant desensitization from HCG. In fact, it's HCG that ultimately makes you produce testosterone initially. It's your mother's HCG. Then there's papers like this, Early HCG-Induced Desensitization in Leydig Cells, where they do say some degree of Leydig cell desensitization did happen with lower doses of HCG. These were single doses. And there's some explanation between like some defective coupling between the receptor sites themselves and some catalytic subunit. They also go on to say, however, apparent receptor loss, this is really what we're talking about here, was significantly lower in the rats who received 50 to 100 IU of HCG. But actually, there are many reasons that you can take HCG and have some sort of positive effect from it, and then you continue taking the HCG, and then those effects stop. One of them is estradiol. Yeah, look, we already know that HCG induces the Leydig cells to produce estradiol independent of how much testosterone is being produced in the testes. So it's not even just your test aromatization E2, it's that you actually just stimulate estradiol in the testicles from using HCG regardless of testosterone. So keep that in mind. And as we all know, and as I've seen in coaching, like the moment that HCG induces estradiol to the point where it's past your threshold for the sexual sweet zone, then the effects that you've been having are going to go away. And it's going to make you think HCG stopped working or you have a desensitized response to it, which is not true. Your HCG could go bad. Yeah, I mean, they say, right? I think some of the manufacturers say it's like, what is it, 8 weeks, 6 weeks, or 8 weeks? It's like 45 days or something where your HCG is good. I think that's like the proclamation coming from the makers of Pregnal, one of the most potent, powerful HCGs that we can get, which is super expensive. But in reality, I haven't even really seen Pregnal last like the whole 45 days. I would reconstitute Pregnal every 25 to 30 days. But when it comes to some like UGL HCG that you might get, especially if you're getting good deals on it, which by the way, resources in Mastering Testosterone Cypionate on the top right-hand corner of the screen. Well then, if you can afford it because you have a lot of HCG and it's cheaper via, good UGL source, then you can and should reconstitute HCG every 3 weeks. And what happens, which makes people think that it's HCG-induced desensitization of the Leydig cells, is actually just HCG denaturing. It's a peptide, and peptides can go bad. So that's number 2. Thirdly, though, let's talk about the science behind this so that we can put this idea to rest, or at least the idea in people's heads of why HCG might stop working and what are the mechanics of desensitization. Let's look at what really actually happens. This is a paper that is titled Resensitization of Testosterone Production in Men After Human Chorionic Gonadotropin, or HCG-induced desensitization, which implies that it does desensitize the Leydig cells or the response to some level, but it doesn't. I'm going to tell you exactly what that paper says, starting from this. All right, number 1, you take HCG. It mimics luteinizing hormone and tells the testicles to produce testosterone. In the first 24 hours after starting HCG, your testosterone levels rise, but then they plateau. Like, why would they plateau? And it does this even though there's a lot of HCG still in the blood. Now, that looks like, and this is what that study said, that looks like desensitization, doesn't it? Why would test plateau? And it obviously, though, is a temporary stop or halting a little bit, maybe slowing down of the testosterone production and implying that there is some sort of desensitization, but it's not from damaged receptors or receptor loss. What's really happening is a temporary block in the conversion step from 17-hydroxyprogesterone to testosterone. Okay, that's one of the first pathways that HCG creates testosterone in the testicles, right? Via telling 17-hydroxyprogesterone to convert to testosterone. But within 24 hours, what happens is that pathway, because of that continued HCG stimulation, which by the way is different than your LH pulses, your natural LH pulses, and I think this is why this happens, that pathway gets congested, meaning it stops producing testosterone temporarily from the 17-hydroxyprogesterone to testosterone pathway and changes to DHEA producing testosterone. And in that study, at 72 hours, like after this supposed desensitization happens, that first pathway goes a little nil. And then the second pathway, meaning DHEA itself actually increases. So all that suggests is that the body preferentially to continue making testosterone changes from the A4 pathway to the A5 pathway for testosterone production. A4 pathway being 17-hydroxyprogesterone to testosterone, and the A5 pathway being DHEA converting to testosterone. So when testosterone stays flat for a bit after 24 hours of HCG, which induces some sort of, again, a plateau of testosterone, implying some sort of desensitization, it's not because your body becomes immune to HCG. It is not because the Leydig cells become immune to HCG. It is not because there is a degree of receptor loss or desensitization to HCG. It's because your body is figuring out how to produce testosterone differently because the A4 pathway is a little congested. And if you look at the study and studies on this, even after 10 days of continuously injecting HCG, that A4 pathway of a 17-hydroxyprogesterone is still a little bit down and there's still a little bit of a bottleneck. But DHEA basically comes in and fills the void. And when DHEA does that, you get a resensitization, right? Resensitization of testosterone production from HCG. And 17-hydroxyprogesterone actually remains somewhat high in the latter part, say you're 2 weeks in or 3 weeks in or continuously dosing HCG, indicating it's not converting to testosterone, and DHEA is. So all this is a shift in the pathway of biosynthesis to testosterone, not a desensitization of the response to HCG or desensitization of the Leydig cells. Okay, if you want to go look at this paper to fully understand what I just basically tried to break down in layman terms, it's called Resensitization of Testosterone Production in Men After HCG-Induced Desensitization. Please go read it, understand it, even copy the whole text as I did, put it in ChatGPT and tell it to explain it to you in layman's terms so you fully understand if you didn't understand what I just said. But listen, here's why I'm even talking about this. I see from a coaching perspective a lot of people that are making errors in thinking and errors in attribution. They're attributing some negative effect from something to some theory that they have, i.e. in this case, HCG desensitization, when really it's something else. And I don't want that to happen to people. I want people to be informed on exactly what's going on, because I'll have clients that come on board and say, you know, I've got fried androgen receptors. I'm sure of it. I've done some research on this. I've spent a lot of time in the forums. And in reality, they don't have fried androgen receptors, right? We can use the highest degrees of tolerable mysterolone, which is provirin, which should fix mutated androgen receptors on the binding domains, which foster the gene expression, and nothing changes, right? But they don't get better. We could blast them with testosterone, right? To upregulate, to create more androgen receptors. We could blast them with some SARMs. They could take as much L-carnitine, L-tartrate as possible, and they end up still with this, like there's no change in sexual function or anything because they never had fried androgen receptors to begin with. Then, though, we get them on the right HRT protocol, considering maybe they're producing a little too much estradiol versus DHT. We bring some DHT in there to fix it. We get a low dose of testosterone, so they're not super aromatizing. We get the right amount of HCG in there, the right amount of the ancillaries like DHEA, possibly pregnenolone, but certainly HCG, and then everything's better. Well, what happened there? Turns out they didn't have fried androgen receptors after all. They just needed the right protocol, but they were misattributing this negative effect that they were getting, still persistent sexual dysfunction or whatever, to fried androgen receptors. And I don't like people to have the wrong idea about stuff because you'll never find the solution if you have the wrong idea about what's happening. And that's the case with this whole HCG thing, all right? As I said before, estrogen is produced in the testes via aromatization from HCG in the Leydig cells, independent of the testosterone that you're producing. So yeah, you can inject HCG, you're going to make some testosterone, and people think that the estradiol that comes from that is from the conversion of test to estrogen. It is, but it's also because the Leydig cells fucking produce estrogen by themselves without the testosterone from HCG. And then if you aromatize past your threshold on estrogen, sexual function is going to decline for people that are sensitive. Again, it's like 20%, maybe 15% of people don't really mind estrogen at all. They can have it at 50, 80, 90 or whatever, and they're fine. But that's a small subset of people. The rest of everybody else needs estrogen in that sweet spot at 25 to 35. Ideally, if you can land it at 30, mine's 30.9 picograms per milliliter, you're going to be in the sexual sweet spot zone. But all that estradiol production in the testes via HCG is going to skew everything and make you think HCG isn't working. Then you're going to go HCG stopped working, and I got desensitization of the Leydig cells. Again, repeating the same stuff. If you think about where this came from, where did it come from? Okay, you got a couple studies, but I just explained what actually happens, just a pathway congestion and a change from how you produce tests. You're still producing in the testicles. HCG is thereby still working. People are getting this from forums, boys. Forums. And though it's good to read anecdotals, to get some advice from hopefully some specialized people, you know, or just read around and kind of get information and make your own decisions is probably the best way to use the forums. You can't use what is said on the forums as truth, because then you're going to be running this loop in your head. Oh, HCG desensitized the response and now it's not working anymore and I've got to figure out why. And like you start going down these fucking rabbit holes of shit that is not true. Think about that. You're going to get nowhere operating from things that aren't true. And if anything, I want people to leave this video knowing that. Listen, if you have a theory about why sexual dysfunction is happening, boner issues, libido issues on HRT, make sure you're right. Make sure you're thorough enough to do the diligence to back up your own claims. We are not scientists, and we do not have a laboratory environment to conclusively prove shit. But you can get as close as possible by being super rigorous, as a scientist would, to figure out what the hell the problem actually is. And only then, when you've really done your diligence, then can you make a move. Then you make a move. You try something, you bring something in, you decrease the HCG dose, whatever, and then you move forward that way. But try to prove what your theory is first before going and making a bunch of changes that ultimately end up fucking things up worse. And you don't want that, considering you're not a scientist. I'm not a scientist. We're not scientists, but just try to apply the scientific method and rigorous proof finding, validation or invalidation execution as much as possible. Because in the end, HCG is not desensitizing Leydig cells. That is not happening. That is a myth. Whether it's the first 2 weeks on HCG or whether it is 3 years using HCG, it is still going to work. All right, boys, as I said at the beginning, look, I mean, this is my specialty. If you need to hire me, do that. My specialty is in reviving sexual function on any ester, whether it's cypionate, enanthate, prop, or cream. I know all the strategies because I've seen them all hundreds of times. If you're having libido or erection issues on HRT, just hire me. We can do a one-off call, or better yet, if you've got long-standing sexual dysfunction, we're going to need time. You know, book me for a month minimally, 3 months, 6 months. And if you have the budget, a year. This is for serious individuals, usually business people that obviously have the budget, want a professional to help them execute the right set of protocols so that they can just like, you can move on with your life. Hire me in under a minute for any of that stuff, livecortex.com. Regarding testosterone cypionates, obviously we know it is one of the hardest esters to dial in, especially around libido. Like, you're going to have energy and anabolism and all that stuff from taking, just inject testosterone and you're going to get all that stuff. But what you won't necessarily have is raging erections and a teenage level libido. But with testosterone cypionate, there is a way to achieve that. And I broke it down in every imaginable form in this video course. And by the way, the course comes with resources. Instant download video course. You can get it in under a minute, livecortex.com. All right, that's been the video is... Hold on. The video... Sorry. Give me this! That's the end of the video. It's been an absolute pleasure hanging out with you. My sister just had a baby this weekend, so I had to bounce. I couldn't do content this week. I had to travel literally from the furthermost west side of the state of Pennsylvania, which is Pittsburgh, where I am, to the furthest most eastern part of the state, which is Bethlehem, essentially the Lehigh Valley, where she had a baby. So I am back. I just got back today, and we're back in action, boys. Otherwise known as baction. Do me two favors, like the video. If you like the content that comes out of here and you want more of it, and you also want YouTube to send our content out to other people who need to hear this stuff, just please hit the like button. It would really mean a lot to me. Otherwise, sub to the channel. Almost at 33,000 subs, growing strong and growing rapidly. Become a part of the largest, fastest growing TRT community on the internet. Kick ass, rock on. Enjoy the rest of your day. Talk to you guys super soon. Much more content coming in the coming days. I'll talk to you boys on the next one.